everybody knows that, in a marriage, you want to do things to keep the spark in your marriage. It's just such a cliche that we've all heard. But what about keeping the spark in your housework? I'm Ronnie, and you're listening to Clean With Me, the podcast where I walk you through cleaning your house step by step. Thanks for joining me. I have so much to talk about in today's episode, and this is a little bit more of a topical episode than a step by step. I just want to kind of cover some key points while you're working in a back room. In this episode, I'm going to be encouraging you to clean a back bedroom of your house, to organize and clean it. And by back bedroom, I mean another room besides your own bedroom. And don't tune me out if you only have one back room that you're responsible for and it's your bedroom. Obviously, you can go ahead and clean your bedroom during this episode. But a lot of you have another room in the back of your house that you are responsible for. Okay. If you're like me, you tend to prioritize your living areas, your kitchen, your guest bathroom, and then to a lesser extent, maybe your bedroom and the master bathroom, possibly to keep your spouse happy or so that you can wake up in a clean environment or get ready for the day in a clean environment. But what about that other room? Maybe you have a young child and you're responsible for cleaning their room, or maybe you have a spare room that could be used for an office, a gym, a craft room, or all of the above. And maybe that room has become kind of a catch-all, or it's not necessarily a catch-all, but it just hasn't been cleaned and organized in a while. Anyway, it's time to gear up for your cleaning session. Maybe you need to freshen up for the day a little bit, or maybe you just want to take care of some priority tasks real quick before you disappear into the back. Maybe you want to pick up the front entry area of your home. Okay, for me, that would be the living room, and then probably clearing off the kitchen island that can be seen from the front door. Okay, straightening my front room, clearing off that front island gives a nice first impression, even if there are dishes in the sink or just a few things out of place in the kitchen. My house is going to look generally tidy if I do those two things, straightening the front entrance and clearing off the kitchen island, which you're probably like, what's the significance of the kitchen island if you're new to the show? That's just the part of the countertop that's clearly visible from my front door. It could be something else for you, but maybe you want to just straighten up the first impression area of your home, whatever that looks like in your floor plan. Okay. Or you might be just freshening up and getting ready for the day. I mean, there are a lot of reasons to just stay presentable most of the time. I like to get fixed up fairly early and just be ready for anything, whether you get asked to lunch spur of the moment or somebody FaceTimes you. I mean, nowadays that's a thing. Yesterday, I called my dad to tell him happy birthday, and he wanted to show me something. So he's like, hey, you want to switch to FaceTime? And I was like, sure. And, it didn't set me into a panic because I was fixed up. So there's some motivation if you've been just sitting around in your pajamas with some smeared makeup from the night before. Anyway, that's enough introduction because I want you to make some progress in the back. Hopefully you've either freshened up yourself or your house by straightening up the immediate front entrance. When you head to that back room, make sure that you have the containers you're going to need. If this is just kind of a routine tidying up and it's not a major decluttering and organizing session, you might just need something to put trash in. But you might also have a more complicated situation going on. For example, I am getting ready to totally redo the back room in my house. My middle daughter has moved back in with the father of her kids. And so I've decided, and as you know, I have a son in Marine boot camp. So I've decided to utilize that extra room, and I'm not sure what I'm going to call it yet, but it's going to be used as an office slash gym slash craft storage area. And that sounds like a lot, but we're not rich and we've only got so many rooms, and we still have 3 kids living here. Each of my 2 teenagers has their own room, and then my adult son is staying in the RV in our driveway. It's one of those situations where he's come back temporarily so that he can save up some money. And he likes the privacy of having his own space out there. Of course, he was offered the extra room when it came available. But this is the first time in a very long time, in decades, that I've actually had a spare room. When my husband and I first got married, we rented a 2-bedroom apartment simply because we wanted to have an extra room to store things in. And when we had our first baby, we kept her in the room with us and just used that second bedroom for storage. Because obviously with an apartment, you don't have a garage or anything. And he owned some things, camping gear, fishing gear, things like that he wanted to store in that second bedroom. So that was a spare room per se, which allowed us to keep the living room and our bedroom tidy because that was kind of the overflow area where we could put things. I mean, it gave us an extra closet. And I think we had a TV in there for when his older kids would come visit. But as a lot of you know, I have 6 kids. So since then, I've filled every bedroom of every house. I've lived in 3-bedroom houses and 4-bedroom houses, but I've filled every bedroom. Because by the time we moved into our first 3-bedroom house, we had 2 kids. So hopefully you've got at least a trash bag and maybe some other containers. If you're going to be redistributing things to other rooms of the house, maybe you want to sort things into piles that are within containers, but you do not necessarily need containers to do this kind of sorting. Sometimes I just make a pile of items on either the floor or a freshly made bed that are going to be redistributed to other rooms. That way I don't get sidetracked by leaving the room, but you might like putting those items in a laundry basket. There could be a chance that you get interrupted. You get called away from what you're working on and you have to pause the episode. Maybe you have a baby or toddler who might wake up from a nap, or just something's going to come up where you have to set your housework aside. In situations like that, it's nice to kind of keep the mess contained and maybe have a laundry basket or a box of items that you're going to put somewhere. But you also might be packing up belongings of a specific person, maybe somebody who moved out recently, or maybe somebody who moved out not so recently. I talk to parents all the time of older children who kind of store their kids' stuff indefinitely, and then at some point they're like, you know what, I'm going to clear out that room and make it a guest room. And that's when they box some of the stuff up and then give that adult child a chance to pick up the stuff. But I know a lot of you are in a way earlier stage of life and you don't have adult kids. So I'm not going to talk too much about that. Hopefully, if it's a room that is a bedroom or a guest room, you've at least made the bed. Or maybe you've stripped the bedding and started a load of laundry. If not, do so now. But some of you are probably already working in the room. Always start by clearing the floor, getting things kind of divided into categories or piles, getting a clear floor, and dividing the items you're going to be going through. Of course, if you don't have anything to go through and this is more of a routine clean where you're just putting things in a hamper, a closet, the trash bag, by all means, you can start working on surfaces, windows, windowsills, baseboards, dusting furniture, all the things. But a lot of you have some organizing to do. If you're not sure what to do with something, maybe just place it on the bed, or if there's not a bed in the room, place it into the laundry basket or the redistribution pile to be dealt with toward the end of the episode. But while you're working, I wanted to talk about internal motivation versus external motivation. Everybody knows that In a marriage, you want to do things to keep the spark in your marriage. It's just such a cliche that we've all heard. But what about keeping the spark in your housework? Okay, obviously, it's arguably not as important, but some of us need to stay excited about things to stay motivated. Doing housework can be so mundane and it's a job that's just never really done. I mean, arguably, some of us get our house company ready and we're like, wow, this is the best our house has ever looked. You're having overnight guests and your house is looking amazing. And it's a really good feeling. So that's an external motivation when you're preparing for somebody coming. And then the internal motivation is sometimes we just kind of make a commitment to ourselves like, hey, I'm going to get caught up on laundry. My method of staying on top of laundry is keeping family members' laundry separate. Everybody puts their dirty laundry into a hamper in their own room. And then when it's time to do their laundry, they put that laundry directly into the washing machine. That's the system. But once in a while, something happens where people's laundry kind of gets mixed up, and then procrastination can happen. Nobody really wants to deal with that pile because they don't realize it's theirs. They see other people's stuff. So recently, I had to kind of hit the reset button and just do several loads of laundry, regardless of who they belong to, sort through them, bag it up for someone who'd moved out, and then tell another person, hey, you need to go through this stuff because some of the stuff might be yours, the remaining items. And it can definitely be hard to do laundry when you don't know who the stuff belongs to. And I feel like I was the one who knew best. So it fell to me to get all this laundry caught up to kind of get it back to like, okay, we're caught up now. Everybody needs to do their own laundry separately. And the exception is I do mixed loads for my husband and me, but it's practical because we share a bedroom and he's a man, I'm a woman. It's easy to tell our stuff apart when we're sorting through the laundry. Our laundry loads are supposed to consist of the household towels, a load of our own bedding, or a mixed load of my clothes and my husband's clothes, or possibly separate loads, mine and then his. But I don't really like to do a separate load of my own clothes because then he's like, oh, did you wash any of my stuff? So I try to avoid that question. But that's an example of internal motivation. Another example of internal motivation is when I want to just deep clean my own bedroom or maybe the master shower. When you have a separate shower and bathtub, you're more likely to scrub the bathtub than the shower. So that's something that can get procrastinated on. But sometimes it's like, hey, I really need to get this shower clean. So sometimes you pull out this internal motivation to tackle a specific project. And, while we're talking about you possibly working in a spare bedroom, an internal motivation is that I'm excited to move the gym equipment, which somehow ended up in our living room. See, we had one of these weight machines out in the garage, but obviously the weather's never really perfectly ideal. I mean, it is, but not often. In the summer, it's too hot to want to work out there. In the winter, it's too cold. So my husband ended up bringing it in, and much to my chagrin, he put it in the living room. And it's heavy and complicated to move. It has to be partially disassembled to move it. But now it's on his honey-do list that's going to be going into the back room. And I haven't decided what to call that room yet. Have you ever noticed that you have a name for every room of your house? Like you might move into a house that has two living areas and you're like, this is the living room, this is the family room, or this is the front room, and this is the den, or whatever you call things. It's kind of based on, I guess, the culture you grew up in. I grew up with a laundry room. A lot of times my husband calls that a washroom. It kind of makes me crazy because I feel like a washroom is what like my grandparents were calling a bathroom back in the day. But he's thinking of it as the room where you do the wash. So all that having been said, I haven't decided the name for the spare room yet. I might call it the office because my daughter's room is equally in the back, my teenage daughter's room, but nobody's just going to call it the back bedroom. We're going to call it her name's room. Nobody externally cares if I move stuff into that room So it's kind of an internal thing that I'm excited about spreading out some of my belongings, thinning down what's in my bedroom, thinning down what's in the living room by putting some items in that room. And also making it to where that's where I record. I'm currently in my little corner office of my bedroom where I'm at a desk with a microphone, computer. But the drawback with having that in here is I like to start working early in the morning. And if I'm up earlier than my husband, I don't want to record with him snoring in the background. So there are a lot of different reasons to reorganize your house. Sometimes it's spreading out your belongings so that another room can look more spacious, a more important room can look more spacious, or sometimes it's a practical reason, like you need a place to work. For me, it's both. Another thing I might do with that spare room, hopefully, you're plugging away at organizing a back room, tidying up a back room, whether that's a kid's room, craft room, storage room, spare room, guest room, whatever you call it, office, or even your own bedroom. And sometimes you don't feel comfortable getting rid of things right away, and there's some kind of an interim step, like moving it out to the garage, knowing that when your husband cleans out the garage, he might discard the item. But maybe skip that step and just throw something away. I mean, some people just have a block against throwing things away, but you have to understand you're constantly bringing items into your house, and the longer you live at a house, the more you're going to accumulate. And I'm not saying you have to throw things away. You could have a donation box or a donation bag, but you're still getting rid of items. I mean, when we clean out our backyard, sometimes we're burning things in the fire pit. Other items we take to the city dump, which is a fun activity for most husbands. Like, hey, let's go on a trip to the dump, and they kind of like it because you're working together. Definitely getting rid of stuff is important to your housekeeping. And I talked about internal motivation. I guess moving my podcast setup to that other room is more of an internal motivation than moving the gym from the living room to the back room, because obviously I'm trying to make my living room look better for company. I don't like looking at the gym in the living room, but more importantly, I don't want my guests to see that I have a gym in my living room. It's kind of a guy thing, and this is not a bachelor pad, folks. Don't get me wrong, I'm going to use the gym, but I mean, it's a guy thing thinking it would be okay to have it in the living room. So, an internal motivation could be to make your life more convenient or your immediate surroundings look better. Oftentimes, a cluttered house leads to a cluttered mind. So, those are some internal motivations for keeping those back rooms of your house clutter free, tidied. Now, let's talk a little bit about external motivation. Whose visit are you looking forward to? And we all know that concept of if you invite somebody over for dinner or whatever, a play date, maybe you both have a little kid or something, then that's going to cause you to clean. It's not enough. It is something, and it can cause you maybe to get out of a rut and pick up your living room and vacuum it, do your dishes, and clean your guest bathroom. It can cause you to do those things, but it's not necessarily going to motivate you to detail every inch of your house. I talked about this a while back, but a new neighbor gave me a tour of her house, and I was like, oh, I'll have to show you my house sometime. And I kind of used that as a motivation because I had to get the entire house clean at once. So that's one way to harness that external motivation, is to think about someone touring your entire house. If your house is new and maybe you're taking your time, or new to you, you've moved into it recently, it doesn't have to be brand new, but if you moved into a new to you house, maybe you've got boxes sitting around, you haven't hung up pictures yet. The idea of giving a close friend or family member a tour of your entire house can motivate you to kind of complete that process. Okay. Another motivation could be just someone moving in with you, and they're going to see the back rooms at some point. I didn't really get to harness this recently when my son, who had been living in another state for around 9 years, was coming, I didn't really have a chance to fully detail every inch of my house in preparation for his visit. I would have if I could have, but there just wasn't any time. However, I do have that son in Marine boot camp, and I'm just envisioning his standards getting a lot higher. I mean, we all know about how people in the military have to make their beds a certain way, and they're learning how to do hospital corners. And I'm not saying I'm going to take it that far, but they're taught to be extremely neat and tidy. And I don't want him to come home and kind of see our house with new eyes and suddenly see us as disorganized. The mom who is telling him to keep his room clean all of a sudden falls short of the standards he's been taught. It might be an irrational fear, but I'm kind of using these thoughts to give me this deadline. Okay, like, oh, we've got 6.5 more weeks before he comes home on leave, and I'd like the house to look better than it did before he left. Another example of external motivation is we already know who we're having as guests for Thanksgiving. We're going to have out of town guests. So that's another external motivation. It's a little more long term, but it's like, wow, we should probably get our shower fixed before that. Our guest shower works, but not exactly how it's supposed to. Let's put it that way. I mean, it's the guest bathroom / kid bathroom, but nobody wants to really have to train their guests on how to use the shower. Hopefully, by me sharing these kind of personal thoughts about what motivates me to go deeper with my cleaning and organizing, I've helped you kind of think about what you have coming up. What kind of deadline do you have coming up? Is someone going to be visiting with you for several days? Is somebody moving back into the house and you want to make a better impression than you have in the past? Or is somebody visiting? And there's something about when your adult children move out and then they come home to visit, like they're now visitors that you're straightening up the house for, even though you weren't worried about what they thought of your bedroom when they were kids and they saw your messy bedroom on a regular. There are people who know you well, who've seen your house messy, but you want them to see improvement the next time they come. But sometimes you don't have something like that coming up, and that's where you have to rely on internal motivation. But if internal motivation fails you, which is possible, often it's very hard to be self-motivated. I mean, if we could be self-motivated in every area of life, we'd all be a huge success in every category. We all fight a battle against ourselves and don't always do the things that we wish we could do. But sometimes the thought of surprising your spouse with a clean house, your spouse is someone who's going to see every room of the house at some point, that can be a motivator. That is kind of external, but without having this major event coming, like guests visiting from out of town, or a child moving back in after years of living out of state, or giving someone a tour because it's their first time at your house. And that's not always mandatory, but I feel like if I have someone over and they've given me a tour of their house, then I'm going to reciprocate because they're curious about my bedroom and master bath and, the other rooms of my house. And I welcome that because it causes me to kind of take my cleaning and organizing to the next level and actually see these back rooms through someone else's eyes. And obviously, I talk about mental gymnastics. Pretend your house is on the market and you're a realtor coming through looking at it objectively, and the homeowner has asked you to give them advice. And you're like, well, this corner looks cluttered, maybe put this stuff away. That's still harder than actually planning for guests. Okay, that when it's the real deal, your mind knows it. But doing these make-believe scenarios where you pretend you're a real estate agent or you pretend you're a judgmental guest can help you muster up internal motivation because you're thinking about an external point of view. So yeah, I have a lot of things to be excited about with my housework. Now, I am in a super busy season of life. I'm trying to finally, get my bachelor's degree, and I'm going to have an intense 10 months, but future me wants me to accomplish that. So these projects I'm doing are not going to get done overnight, but they're things that I'm chipping away at to improve the overall look of my home. I mean, I would like my bedroom to look more like a hotel room, but there are things that I store in my bedroom out of necessity. That's going to be changing when I move some of the furniture out and into that back room. And obviously, as a cleaning podcaster, I need to keep that spark alive where I'm excited about what's next for my home. I think everybody needs that. They need to have these motivators. I know people who frequently redecorate their home, and that's one of the motivators. Of course, not everybody can afford that hobby. A lot of us are like, okay, we've already got pictures on the walls. Some things need to be replaced here and there, but we're not going to completely redecorate. But sometimes decorating just seasonally with some items from a dollar store can get you excited about cleaning a room, or buying a fresh set of bedding, a new comforter, new pillowcases and shams can get you excited about detailing your bedroom or your guest bedroom. So, self-imposed deadline number 1 is making sure that my house is clean and organized to a higher standard by the time my son gets back in 6.5 weeks, because he's graduated from live-in child to visiting child. And then major deadline number 2 is getting the house ready for Thanksgiving. But I'm kind of thinking maybe I'll just be 15 minutes away from, clean house, or an hour or two away from a clean house, however you want to think about that, once I've done these improvements of moving stuff into the spare room and stepping up my game before my middle son gets home. What do you have coming up? And maybe the holidays are a little far away. Maybe you are having your in-laws or your own family coming to stay for the holidays, or even if they're staying at a hotel, they might be visiting you a lot, just spending a lot of time in your house. You might be giving them a tour because they've never seen your house. But what do you have before that? What's a short-term event that you're planning for? I mean, sometimes it can be just a daily thing. It could be as simple as accomplishing something before your husband gets home from work. Something different than what you do on a daily basis. You do your routine things. Maybe you always like to have the dishes done before he gets home from work, but being able to show him that you organized a spare bedroom or you cleaned out a closet. And that might not be your style to, do that for him or show him that. I'm just throwing out some ideas. But sometimes getting rid of stuff can be exciting in and of itself. There are times where I've done a major purge and just measured my success in black trash bags and white donation bags. I will often buy 2 colors of bags so that I can differentiate. You don't want to have that like phobia that what if somebody throws this away thinking it's trash or whatever. And sometimes you can even put, things in clear bags that you're keeping. But boxes can also help you differentiate. Or Rubbermaid tubs are great. Or Sterilite is another brand. The brand isn't important, but I'm just kind of talking about these rectangular tubs with lids that you can buy just about anywhere. Those are great for storing things that you're going to keep. And you can label them. Like if you have a toddler who's grown out of their clothes, you might want to put some items in one of those tubs, put the lid on it, and label it girls 2T to 3T or whatever, for example. Another thing I'm big on is after you've done a major purge and decided that you're going to keep certain things, that's when it's time to buy storage containers. You don't want to buy a bunch of containers before you've purged a room, okay? Because as they say, you can't organize clutter. You want to get rid of stuff that you don't need and organize the stuff that's important to you. So from time to time, I'll decide, hey, I want to keep all this stuff, this certain category of items, and I'll buy those little plastic dressers that you can get at Walmart or another similar store like that. I like to store those in my walk-in closet. Those are great for storing things like yarn or stationery, or insert whatever there. If you're organizing a kid's room, they're great for organizing Legos or other small toys. And some people like to go a step further and actually label those plastic dressers, which I've done with the one in my closet. Because sometimes if you don't mess with that dresser for a while, you kind of forget, like, what was this drawer for? There's nothing in it. What was I planning to put in this drawer? Okay. So I'm planning to have my office slash podcast set up in one corner of that spare room that's currently spare but won't be spare once I set it up. I'm staking my claim on that room. But I'm also going to move this small coffee table. If you've really been listening to this podcast for a while, you might even remember that I have a small coffee table along one wall in my bedroom, and it's got a couple drawers and it's got a shelf under it. That's going to go into the spare room too, because I'm going to use that to store and organize my yarn. And then I'm planning to hang my loom knitting looms above it, like to put little hooks and everything, stuff that I've been doing in my bedroom. When I'm thinking about how I want a bedroom to look that I sleep in, I kind of envision a nice hotel room. There's a large work of art that's kind of a focal point, maybe a couple smaller pictures on the side walls. There are nightstands. There might be a desk or a TV stand. Mine's going to be minus the desk. Okay, at this point in the episode, I want you to gather up any items that need to be moved out of your room, okay, that you're working on. And either get rid of them, put them in a closet somewhere, figure out what you're going to do with them. Maybe they need to be in a laundry basket temporarily while you buy some kind of a plastic tub or dresser. This is what I call recovery time, where you've been working in a room and then you don't want to leave a mess. You don't want to leave piles. Let's quickly make some decisions and deal with those piles. Maybe you need to put a donation bag in the trunk of your car. Maybe you need to move something to a different room. That whole spreading out concept where you move something into an overflow room to make the important room more spacious. I want my bedroom to feel peaceful and spacious. I'm okay with the fact that there are going to be a lot of things going on in that spare room. I think I'm leaning strongly toward calling it just my office. Obviously, my husband's going to be working out in there, but I have a gym in my office and my husband comes in here to work out. Okay? Sometimes you got to just define the space. What is the purpose of that room you're working in? Think about that while you're putting things away and getting it organized. Maybe you're calling it a guest room or sewing room. Once you put those items away, and maybe you need to pause the episode if you need more time, you want to do some dusting and cleaning. Maybe you need to dust the ceiling fan. Maybe you need to wipe out at least one windowsill. Or if you have a sliding glass door in your master bedroom and that's where you're working, you need to vacuum out the dust out of the tracks of that sliding glass door. Okay? Or maybe you just need to wash a window. Regardless of what you use that back bedroom for, it probably has a window. And dusting doesn't take that long. I mean, if you've been working in a room this long, and it has nightstands, you've probably cleared off those nightstands. Or if it's an office, you've probably cleared off the surface of the desk. Time to wipe it down, because the finishing touch is vacuuming and dusting the room. So let's get it dusted, and then I'm going to be closing out this episode, but you might want to put on some music while you sweep and mop or vacuum and mop if it's a hard floor, or just vacuum if it's a carpeted room. A bonus task could be cleaning a stain off the carpet with, using a spot cleaner and a spray bottle and a damp rag. Always be observant when you're vacuuming carpet for spots that need to be cleaned. And if you have family members who are old enough to help you, maybe you've created a pile and they need to come get their stuff. Okay, everybody, come get your stuff out of this pile. These are items that don't belong in this room. Come get them and put them away. Often as a mom, whether I'm folding a bunch of laundry, a bunch of miscellaneous laundry that's gotten mixed together, or I'm just cleaning out a closet, I will make piles for people and then I'll call them at the end. Hey, come get this stuff. Or, hey, son, I found these items that used to belong to your older brother. I want you to take these and put them in your closet because these would fit you now. Something I did recently when I went through my hall closet. I hope you got a lot done during this episode. My next bonus episode is going to be a walk with me episode, but I'm not going to record it while walking. I'm going to record it in the studio, so to speak, so that you won't have to listen to all the wind and the background noise. It'll be more like one of these cleaning episodes. But the good news is that one's going to be available for all of my supporters. Some of the Walk With Me episodes are not available for people on the lowest level of Patreon support. I want to make the next one available to all financial supporters at every level, just to kind of give you a sample of what that's about, to see if you want to start supporting on Apple or on the all access level of Patreon. But anyone who's supporting the show is doing me such a huge favor and hopefully also benefiting from the content. So stay tuned for that Walk With Me episode that's going to be available to everyone who supports me at any level. Again, some Walk With Me episodes are only available to Spreaker and Apple supporters and people who are all access supporters on Patreon. There is a very affordable basic level on Patreon that unlocks all cleaning episodes. But I'm going to give everybody who's supporting at any level a sample of the Walk With Me episodes. So that's coming next. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate each and every one of you. As always, happy cleaning, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.